Hey guys, it's so good to have you. We are Elevate Church and this is our online experience. If you guys are at home and you've been joining us for a few weeks now, or maybe you're fresh to our channels, like our channels, subscribe to our platforms, and maybe share us with a family member or a friend that you think may be interested. Today's awesome worship partner is a homegrown talent coming from Melbourne, Australia. It's Gateway Church.
I close my eyes and colors fly. There's no hiding from your grace. I can't deny your heart for mine, and it's unrelenting chase. Always on the edge of deception, caught up in my own hesitation, until your love took over me. Oh, so I let them, and I let them show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, an oasis, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm a church. Ooh la la, ooh la la. When I let go, then I find life. Ooh la la, ooh la la. When I let go, then I find life. La 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 la. Come on, sing the highway. The highway is calling me to a life unlike before. The Father's heart is beckoning, and I can't resist no more. Lead me in the ways of devotion. I don't wanna get caught in the motion. My heart is only for you, Lord. Oh, so I let go, and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now come on, church. Ooh la la, ooh la la. When I let go, then I find life. Ooh la la, ooh la la. When I let go, then I find life. La 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 la. When I let go, then I find life. Come on, let's get a clap going. This is why we're here this morning, to give him praise. So I let go. So I let go, and I let that show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. When I let go, then I find life. When I let
So if you're a first time watcher, today is a great time to start. It's a brand new series. It's called All In, taken by our good friend Steve Hall. Buckle up.
I've been at Elevate or / Rivervale 57 years. I'm now 65. Started through Sunday school and then just kept going, virtually. Yeah.
Okay, I started going to Sunday school a year after Vicky started. It's in 1964 and have just been there ever since. Went through youth group, we met and started going out in youth group and then got married there and we're still there. I think it's because that's where God wants us. Over the years there've been times and I guess some opportunities where we could have changed churches. We've lived in a different area for a little while, but it's always seemed that God wanted us there and so we've just stayed there and that's where we are.
Because God just wants us to do that and we've got the ability, so why not? And to share it to others. Just why not? Really, personally speaking, it's our duty and it's not a chore by any stretch of the imagination. We just love doing it and it's serving God.
In the days gone by, you were sort of taught that it was your duty to serve, and to some degree that's true. But now I see it as more of a privilege to serve because God is always working and doing things, and I think it's a privilege to be able to join Him in the work that He's doing.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we've got so many opportunities. Most people are on the right page and we're heading in the right direction. And like I say, there's heaps of opportunities coming. God's leading us, and that's the main thing. We're going forwards, not taking 10 steps backwards.
Well, I guess I just want to see people grow and experience God and have an experience with God that I've got, and so just trying to do what I can to encourage people and for them to come into a relationship like that with God.
Hi, great to be here as we start a new series of All In. But before I start, let me ask you a question that you probably heard a number of times over the last month was, how was your Christmas? I've been asked that so many times. The first thing people come is not how are you, was how was your Christmas? I wonder what your Christmas was like, because mine was fantastic. I loved my Christmas. Our Christmas day, my boys turn up and their wives and the children, the grandchildren, and we always have, when I'm ready, because I'm the patriarch, I'm the one that starts this, I'm the head of the house, we will start an all-out, all-in water bomb fight. There are thousands, 5,000, 10,000 water bombs will get thrown around my household. There will be people running around. There'll be adults on the roof of the house to get better advantage. There will be people running through the house with water bombs. There are no rules when it comes to our Christmas water bomb fight. And everyone's involved, the grandchildren, the adults, myself, we use bombs, we even got out, you believe it or not, we got out the high pressure sprayer just to make sure everybody was wet. I loved it. It's crazy. But not everybody's like that. As I've been talking around, I've discovered that there's been some horror Christmas stories where families have got together and that skeleton in the cupboard comes out once again. Or maybe there's that conversation that everybody's trying to forget, but it's going to come out. Or there's been families that have had disagreements going on for years and they come out. And what I heard as I've been talking around is there is some tensions in families. And even though you can be in a crowd, you can feel so rejected. You can feel so lonely. You can feel like, you know what? I don't know if I want to be here. You know, if you go back into the Bible, which we use as our foundation in the church, you go right back to the beginning in Genesis. And there's that account of the creation of the world. And God's there busy. He has made the animals in his dens back and goes, you know what? I'm pretty good. I made that. Good stuff. Made the trees, made the stars, all that stuff. And all the time he kept going, yeah, that's pretty good. Got to make man in his own image. He was pretty proud of that because then he said, well, you know what? That's very good. I made that. But there was one thing that wasn't good. One thing that he stood back and goes, nah, that hasn't made it. That's not good. And it was one thing and one thing only. And that was man was alone. You see, the one thing that is not what we were created for was feeling alone, feeling rejected, feeling isolated. And yet we find that that is a pandemic in society today. It's a pandemic that's gone through that there's no needle for. Let me just give you some stats. I was reading this up the other day. It says 1 in 4 Australians, that's people that live in the lucky country, feel alone. It also said that many Australians, especially younger Australians, report anxiety about socialising. Mate, that's crazy. That even in socialising, even trying to connect with people, I'm feeling anxious. 30% don't feel part of a group of friends. That is crazy. Lonely Australians have worse physical, mental health and are more likely to be depressed. 80% below 18 feel loneliness. 40% of people over 50. We're not even going to start talking about our seniors. You see, loneliness is right in our society, even though there's lots of people around. And loneliness comes out in a number of ways. We find that drinking alcohol is one way of trying to deal with my loneliness. Alcoholism created by this sense of covering up my loneliness. We also find that depression and even some of our behaviours, you know, that person you have in the office that is constantly talking or constantly trying to be the centre of attention or needing to be in control, probably because deep down there's this real sense of, I need to be valued, I need to be accepted. Rejection and loneliness is a tough thing. And yet when I look at that, in this digital world where communication is on its highest form, yet we find that with the use of social medias, especially, or even smartphones, people still not communicating, people still not engaging. But see, God had a plan on this. He had this great plan. He decided, he said, what I'll do is I'll make someone for you. I'll make you a bride. Here's an interesting one for you, especially if you belong to a church or a Christian community. God's answer to loneliness is his bride. It's the bride of Christ. It's his church. You see, this loneliness that is in our society, God's created a community to actually overcome that. But not just a community of people that have common, but a community that actually will love one another as I have loved you. So I look at this and I go, wow, here is the greatest call of the church. It's the greatest call of those who believe in God and have a relationship with him is you've got an opportunity of dealing with this epidemic. You were designed for this. You were made for this. It's what we are supposed to all get into. But I want to take you to a story. I want to take you to a dinner table. It was set over 2,000 years ago. It's in Jerusalem. And it's around this table where these guys called Pharisees. Now, these are rabbis who have studied the law, and Pharisees, different to Sadducees, Pharisees focus very much on the law that was given to Moses, 10 Commandments, all that gig. They focus on that, and they came up with all these other rules to help us fulfill the 60 rules. And so it got quite complicated, but every rabbi had a different take on it. They called it their yoke, or if you like, their manifesto. It was their idea of how you're supposed to live this life. But what they would do is, and we take this story, they're around this table and they went and invited Jesus. Simon, a Pharisee, invites Jesus around this table. And I want to suggest, because evidence shows that this was quite early in Jesus' public ministry, it was there to really test him out, to see what this rabbi, because he was a rabbi at the age of 30, what this rabbi had to say. What was his thinking? What was his understanding of the law? So they were really testing him out. And Jesus is at this meal table. It would have been quite public, so others were watching in, having this meal, but also a conversation about the law. And I want us to pick it up in Luke 7. We'll go to the story. If you want to follow me, look it up because it's a great story. But Luke 7:37, it says this: one of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, because his feet would have been behind as they leant down at the table, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet. She wiped them with her hair. Even that is crazy, because a woman would not bring her hair down. That was embarrassing. That was disgusting. That was not the right cultural thing to do. But she used her hair to wipe his feet. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. Imagine the Pharisees sitting around checking this out and going, wow, what is happening here with this rabbi? When the Pharisee who had invited him, that's Simon, saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She is a sinner. You know, everyone talks about this alabaster jar, and it was pretty significant what she did with that. But I want us to go and consider this woman. What was this woman doing? Who was she? She doesn't have a name. We don't know a lot about her except she was a sinner. Well, we're all sinners, but you see, in that terminology, that meant that she was an outcast. She wasn't acceptable. Many have suggested that she was probably a prostitute. No real evidence on that, but you could read into that and say, yeah, that would make sense, especially with the other things that happened around that table. So here's this lady who's obviously carrying a lot of hurt, because when she sees Jesus, she just pours all that emotion all over his feet. This lady was carrying some pain, carrying some hurt. I would suggest probably even carrying a real heart of rejection. After all, she would have been rejected from the community because she was a sinner. Sinners weren't allowed in. What was she doing there? You know, the thing is, she was a prostitute. I don't believe that would have been her initial choice. I don't think she went to the careers day at year 11 and 12, where there was all these booths around telling you could go to university, come to the army, go to the Navy, all these booths that we set up at career days with options. You know, come do an apprenticeship. And there is the red booth. be a prostitute. I don't think that happened. Or be an alcoholic. People don't choose that. So what happens? How did she get to a place of being such an outcast as possibly a prostitute? Maybe she was abused. Maybe she had been abused by her husband. Maybe she'd been raped. Maybe she'd been left, because in that culture, if you have been divorced, there is no social security, there's no pension. You've got to find your own way in life. How do you do that? Maybe the only way she could survive and keep her children and keep her family was to prostitute herself. So here's a person carrying pain, carrying a mess of life, and the only way to solve it was to prostitute herself, which actually caused her to be more separated. I love this because you see, when you look at this, Jesus is at this table, and a person who is carrying that rejection, carrying that hurt, carrying that sense of inner shame and guilt, ends up at Jesus' feet. I wonder how she got there. Why did she know it was okay to go to him and not the others? I wonder if this lady may have been at one of Jesus' teachings where he actually shared some truths that she went, wow, this guy really accepts me. Maybe she was sitting there when Jesus said these words that we find in Matthew, and I'm going to read it from the Message, because in the Message it says it beautifully. Eugene Peterson writes it this way in Matthew 11:28. Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? See, religion, which is what the Pharisees were good at, is all about what you can't do, what you should do, and what you must do. It's all about the do's and don'ts. It's all about you have to live this way. And you know what? That tires you out. That wears you out. Religion wears you out. Religion destroys your soul. Religion is all about what you do. And you get tired on that. And it just wears you out. It burns you out. And Jesus says this to those people, and maybe you're one of those. And he says these amazing words, this great word of invitation. Come to me. Oh, wow. Imagine sitting there and a rabbi saying, religion, are you tired of it? You worn out? I've got something new. Come to me. Here's the invite. Come to me. Get away with me. If there was a word to the church today, I believe the Spirit of God would say to the church, come away with me. Slow down for a bit. Stop the pressure. Come to me. And you'll recover your life. Wow, imagine a lady like that hearing those words. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me. Work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. In the other translation, it goes something like this. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden or burdened, and I will give you rest. It says, my yoke, or that teaching that I talked about earlier, it isn't hard. It's not supposed to be heavy. You're not supposed to look like you've just sucked a lemon. His teaching is to give you life, and life in the fullness. I wonder if that lady heard that. I wonder if you need to hear that. I wonder if for you. See, if 1 in 4 people are struggling with inner loneliness, internal pain, I'm sure there's somebody listening to this right now. Right now you need to hear those words. Come to me. It's not about do's and don'ts. It's about an invitation. It's an invitation to come. And listen to what Jesus then went to say. At the end of that, in Luke 7:48, Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. Those things that separate you from everybody, those sins that are keeping you away, those sins that are isolating you, they're forgiven. They're forgiven. They're got rid of. You can come now and rejoin. The men at the table said among themselves, who is this man that he goes around forgiving sins? Let me tell you who he is. He's God. He's Jesus. But Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Now go in peace. I bet that lady needed to hear that. Come to me first, take the load off your shoulders, and now go in peace. I want to just leave you in this part of the message with this invite. Are you broken? Are you hurting? Are you feeling lonely? Are you struggling with shame? Are you struggling with grief? Then the invitation is to come. You're welcome. You haven't got to do anything. You just got to come and believe. And I see it happen so often with those who are caught up in addiction, who are caught up in pain, who are caught up with the shame of their actions, suddenly come to a relationship with God and lights come on and the peace enters. But here's the second invitation. Just yesterday I was talking to a friend, a new friend actually. We were sitting around introducing ourselves to each other and he said, oh, you were up in Kalamunda, which is the area I used to pastor in. Said, my wife, who didn't come from a believing family, who didn't come from a family that had any sort of Christian faith or belief, actually discovered God and she didn't know where to go. So she actually came and sat on the steps of your church, wondering whether she was welcome or not. And she left there. Isn't that crazy? Wondering if you're welcome. People shouldn't wonder if they're welcome into the very place that's there to actually break the pain of loneliness, rejection and hurt. But she did. She came and she sat there and she went. And I've met so many people who have said, I love God, but I'm just struggling with the church. I don't feel accepted because I've been divorced, or I had a child out of wedlock, or I had a certain beliefs about sexuality, and I don't feel welcome. And yet that's not what I hear around that table with Jesus, where he says, you're welcome, come. You know, there was a lady who came to our church, her name was Dorothy, and she'd come from a different area. She was in a previous church I was in, and she decided to come up to the one I was in Kalamunda, a very different socio-economic background. And she walked in, and this lady, she had tattoos all up her arm, and she'd been in and out of prison a number of times, and she smelt like an inside packet of her cigarettes, and she never wore shoes. And she walked into the building one Sunday, and she joined in, and about 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, she came to me and she said, Steve, I've been to so many churches, and they've told me I need to go and get some shoes, or they're going to bought me shoes, but I can't wear them. But your church embraced me and made me feel like family, and didn't even worry about that, and didn't worry about my language, and they just accepted me. And she said, I feel like I've come to a family. That's how the church should be. Many years ago, a guy by the name of Chuck Smith, I think his name was, who had this church, and it was in the time of a great Jesus movement, and lots of hippies were all turning up at church because they'd found Jesus, and it turned up and they didn't have shoes on, and they didn't have, they would look pretty unusual, and they turned up to church, and the church was growing. And it grew so much that the board decided that they would put carpet down in the building. Well, one morning after the new carpet had been put down, Chuck turned up at the church and there was a sign. and it said, "No bare feet allowed." He ripped that sign off. He went up in the front of the church and he said, "If people can't come in with bare feet, we're ripping the carpet up." What do we need to rip up to invite people in? This year, as we all get into the things Jesus wants to do, which is to reach out to the lonely, to reach out to those who are hungry, to reach out to those who are lost, to make people who are struggling with acceptance be accepted. If we're going to be all in with that, what do I need to rip up? What do I need to put aside? What comforts do I need to put to one side? Because the heart of God is that no one should be alone. The heart of God is that all should be able to come to him and find that peace and to find that love and to find that acceptance. So much so that they will weep at his feet and won't be ashamed to wipe his feet with their hair. That's our call. That's your invitation. Your invitation is the one to come, but your invitation is also to go and invite others. And that's our commitment. Let me pray. Father, I just want to say thank you that you told us to come, and I thank you that I can come. And I just want to pray now that we would be a reflection of you in society, where we are keen to invite those who need the peace and need the love and need the acceptance that only you can give. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for our brand new message, All In Guys. If you've been thinking about taking the next step with Elevate Church and helping us reach and build into more people all over the world, just like you, the ways to give can be found just below. Until then, go on and have a lovely week.